What's going on, guys? It is an incredibly cold morning. It's probably about 19 degrees right now, and I figured I would make a video all about what you should wear hunting when it's cold outside. This is something that when I first started hunting, I completely butchered. I ended up having to end my hunts early all the time because I was just so cold. I couldn't sit in the woods for more than a few hours, and that's just because I was not prepared. So if you're a new hunter and you want to know what you should wear in the woods to stay warm, I'm gonna explain that in this video. So the first thing you need to understand is that when you're outside in the cold hunting, you're most likely not going to be moving a whole lot. And that means you're gonna get cold a lot easier. This is one of the biggest mistakes I've made. You know, I've spent a lot of time outside in winter, usually hiking, going for walks. My body's constantly moving, but with hunting, yes, you are gonna be walking to your location, and sometimes you're gonna be stalking or moving around, but the reality is you're gonna be sitting for some period of time, and if you're not prepared, you're gonna freeze your butt off. So the way to stay warm outside simply comes down to layering. All you need to understand is that you need to have a base layer, a mid layer, and an outer layer. Those three layers are what you need to stay absolutely toasty outside, and I'm gonna go through each one of these individually. So the first thing you're gonna need, of course, is a base layer. The sole purpose of a base layer is to wick moisture away from your skin, because that moisture is ultimately what's going to keep you cold. In my opinion, the best base layer that you can wear is wool, and that's because wool keeps you warm even if you're wet. I really like to use merino wool as my base layer. You can buy it in different weights in accordance to how cold you expect your temperatures to be, but ultimately I find merino wool to be incredibly effective at keeping you warm and having that base layer. This was the game changer for me, was investing in some good quality merino wool. You don't need to get fancy with it, just get a nice top, a nice bottom. It's going to be absolutely perfect for keeping you warm in the woods. The other thing you're going to want to do is make sure that you wear the merino wool directly on your skin. This is going to keep you super warm, so don't have any underwear in between or any other materials directly contacting your skin. You want that wool to be in direct contact with your skin. Okay, so moving on to your mid layer. This is gonna be the layer that's going to insulate you and keep you nice and toasty. So they make mid layers in all sorts of different materials, but what I found to be really effective is having some sort of a fleece material, or you could use some sort of a down material. In my case, I didn't invest in a fleece top. This is just the inner shell of a North Face jacket that I had, and the material in the inside is down feathers. It works really, really well, as you can imagine, to keep you insulated. And for my bottoms, I just use some fleece pajama pants that I actually use every night in winter just to go to sleep with, and they work perfectly outside as well. It's that nice fleece material, so serves as the purpose of pajamas and for being out in the woods. So there you go. And so moving on to your outer shell, your outer layer is basically going to serve the purpose of preventing you from getting wet. So what you're going to want is something obviously that's waterproof, and I like to go a little extra further and get something that's also going to be warm. So you can see here the top that I'm wearing. This is technically my outer layer, but it does have some insulation. This is a completely 100% wool outer layer, and what I really like about this, especially for hunting, is that it's so quiet. A lot of the outer shell materials tend to be polyester, and when you're moving around in the woods, that rubbing material could potentially scare away game. So the reason that I also love wool, once again, you can see my partiality to wool, is because it's so quiet, in addition to its insulating properties and its waterproof properties as well. So the bottoms that I'm wearing are also a 100% wool outer layer, which do have some insulation material inside as well, but this is going to keep you nice and dry and also have the added benefit of keeping you nice and warm. Okay, so moving on to accessories, I think this goes without saying. You're definitely going to want to use some sort of a hat. You lose so much heat through your head. So right now I'm wearing a Carhartt hat. I think this material is probably a cotton polyester blend. Again, I'm more partial to wool, but in the case of a hat, I think you can kind of go both options. If you can, definitely go with the wool option. Again, it's waterproof. I think it's much superior, but in this case, my Carhartt has been working really well, so I'm cool with that. And then regarding your boots, you're definitely gonna want a pair of waterproof boots, and underneath you're gonna be wanting to wear some thick wool socks. The last thing you're gonna want is your feet to get wet while you're hunting, so I find the wool socks, just in case water does get in, again, is gonna keep you nice and dry, but really you wanna make sure your boots are not letting water in the first place. So there's so many different options out here. I just happen to have these really old LL Bean boots that work really well, and they keep me nice and insulated and dry. The next thing you're gonna wanna think about is what you're wearing on your hands. I like to have two different options. I always carry a pair of fingerless wool merino gloves, as you can see here, and that's because I really like to have my fingertips free when I'm putting ammunition in my gun or doing things that require a lot of dexterity. A lot of thickness around the fingers can of course impede your ability to work on whatever you're doing. So I like to carry a nice pair of fingerless gloves like this. It's gonna keep me warm, but in the event that I am sitting for a really long time without moving around, I like to bring a second pair of gloves that are nice and beefy, which will cover my fingers completely. And usually what I'll do is I'll actually wear the fingerless gloves underneath the big ones, just so I can take it off really quickly in case I need to make a shot. They make gloves that have the option of being both fingerless and have insulation around your fingers, so you can find those. This is just what I happen to have. I didn't feel like spending money on anything else, so what I opted for is just to bring both. Another tip that I find really helpful for spending a long time out in the woods on cold days is to bring a hot beverage. This could be tea, coffee, hot chocolate, anything that you can sip on throughout the day. And what I like to do is I like to put that into a thermos, an insulated thermos, which will keep it really warm the entire day. I think there's something so nice about having a beverage that you can sip on, which will keep your insides super toasty. Again, this is not a requirement. I don't always do this, but for the really long sits in the woods, I definitely like to have that. And if it's super cold, what I'll often do is I'll bring hand warmers and actually put them inside of my gloves, and I'll also do the same with my feet. This is something that I used to do skiing growing up. I never thought about actually using hand warmers when I'm out in the woods hunting, but it just dawned on me one day that you could do that, and it made a huge difference. So if you're gonna be spending time outside when it's 15 degrees like all day, I definitely recommend carrying a couple packets of hand warmers with you. It's gonna be a nice thing to just crack open and throw into your gloves and boots in the event that you find yourself getting really cold, even with gloves, socks, and boots on. All right, so the last little tip I have for you is to keep yourself off of the ground. So when you're sitting on the ground, obviously the ground is going to be a lot colder than your body, and so of course heat transfer is gonna occur from your body to the ground and vice versa. So I use this foam pad that I have, that I actually use in the gym when I'm exercising. It's not for hunting specifically, but it's a nice thick foam layer that will keep me elevated from the ground, so my butt is not directly on the ground in contact with the ground. It makes a huge difference when it comes to staying warm. All right guys, so I hope that these few simple tips keep you nice and toasty the next time you're out hunting in the woods. I had to learn the hard way through trial and error, and it was on my heart to share this with as many people as I could because, well, being outside in the cold, freezing your butt off just absolutely sucks. So if you happen to watch this video the next time that you go into the woods, hopefully you'll be prepared. I am the adult onset hunter, but don't worry, I'm not the only one. You can be one too. Signing off. We'll see you next time.